Thought gets taken for granted. Have you ever just stopped to think? Once you realize the capabilities of thought, you'll soon understand that the mind is a terrible thing to waste. I suggest you use yours. I'll use mine. So I've been thinking.
I'm Stephen Dozier, born and raised in Long Island, New York. I've always kind of considered myself an entertainer. From a young age, I could recall myself kind of putting on shows for family members and making them laugh. Me, my brother, my cousins, we put together like groups and act out scenes from movies. And even when I started school, I took it to school and kind of got like a lot of attention without even trying, with just being myself, just, being Stephen.
My name is Christina Jasmine. I was Stephen's 11th grade U.S. history teacher. My first year teaching is when I met Stephen. In class, he always kind of liked to be the jokester, kind of the class clown, cracking jokes, but when it came down to it and he needed to get to work, he would.
A lot of people gravitated toward my kind of personality. It's kind of like contagious. Like when you get around me, I create vibes, so to speak. I create spaces where, people have fun, people enjoy themselves, people smile. I create smiles. Where there's no smiles, I create. I was on the morning announcements, and it was a show that was pretty dry prior to me. I ended up implementing things like music and jokes of the day and things like that, and had people coming to me. I had my own little character, my own personality. And I had people coming to me in the hallways and ask me questions about the show and want to get on the show, and they really liked it.
It's kind of a funny story about Stephen, and this is the type of student he was. I was probably yelling at him for something to get back on track because he wasn't paying attention or he was joking around, and the principal walked in with a bunch of other people to observe me, and all of a sudden he turned it on like he was student of the year. And when they left, I said, "Oh, it's nice to see that you could be a real student." And he told me it was nice to see that I could actually be a real teacher and teach, because I don't do that on a normal basis.
In 2010, I think it was maybe March of 2010, my mother was on a train coming from a party. One of her friends had a birthday party. She was on a train going back home, and she fell out on the train and had a massive stroke. For a few months after that, she was in intensive care and somehow pulled out of it. I recall asking God, I'll take my mother any way you can give her to me. I said, just don't take her away. She pulled through, and we were on the road to recovery. Throughout that process, now it's about June now, and right before my dad went on vacation, I told him to go see my mom. She was recovering. He went and did it. I like to think that he did it for me. So he goes to do it. He sees her. It messed him up. He told me all about it, how bad it was, and how he didn't want to see her like that. And then he decides to go on vacation. He goes on vacation completely fine to Puerto Rico, and he has a massive heart attack and dies. In 2018, it was about a Sunday, I got a phone call saying that my mom had pancreatic cancer. And when I was told that, I knew immediately that it was bad. And I knew I had to get down to North Carolina. So within the next 5 to 8 hours, I was in my car driving down to North Carolina. So all these things, I have 8 hours for my mind to totally, go everywhere. And when I get there, my mom notices me and she greets me. And that's when I realized I have to watch my mom die. And they called 3 days, and 4 days she was gone. And that's something that I'm still trying to process. We're about 6 months out, and I'm still trying to grasp my hands around it. I don't think I ever will, just like my dad. But it's trying to live life and understand not try and play the victim, but understand why you, but understand there's a bigger picture. And that kind of takes me back to being an entertainer. I use my creativity as kind of like my therapy. When I create, I feel good. When I make people smile, I feel good. And when I'm not, I don't. So I decided to start a podcast called So I've Been Thinking the Podcast. SIBK the podcast.
Yeah, so my name is Marvin Moscow. I'm one of Steven's good friends and also his co-host to his podcast, So I've Been Thinking. I come from North and South Shore, Long Island. Grew up around that area for my whole life. And I met Steve at church, actually. I think he was singing in the choir or something like that. And I recognized him because we went to the same school. And I actually met him through somebody else. And then we ditched the guy we met him through. And then me and Steve's been best friends ever since, man.
When you initially tell somebody you're starting a podcast, one of the first things they ask you is, what is your podcast about? Well, my podcast isn't necessarily one of those trendy podcasts that might talk about, what's going on at the time. I think when things are necessary, we address them as far as like pop culture, politics, and things of that nature. But for the most part, I like to focus on things that like I think about and how it resonates with everyone else's mind. And it all started from conversations in my house.
It came into fruition at a dinner table, without dinner. Just friends talking, and he's like, yeah, I'm thinking about doing a podcast. I'm like, dang, that sounds like a great idea. I would definitely love to be down. Inviting myself before he even invited me. And he's like, you know what? I was gonna ask you. And I'm like, amazing idea.
It's a good listen. I mean, I'm not just saying that because it's my podcast. It's the general consensus that it's a great podcast. It's actually the greatest in the world. So yeah, so I've been thinking the podcast. It's on SoundCloud and iTunes, SIBK the podcast. So I've been thinking the podcast. I go by the name of Sleeve Steve, Sleevacious, Sleevante, Sleevey Wonder. I need you to do me a huge favor and live life accordingly. One love. Peace.